Hey there, health coach. Are you worried about your clients not completing their action steps? Are you finding that you're checking in with them multiple times in between sessions? Do you want to provide good value and have your clients be successful? If so, then this video on accountability is absolutely for you. So let's start with what is accountability and why is it such a key part of the coaching relationship? So we'll start there. So essentially, accountability is being held responsible for your actions. And in some instances, accountability can feel negative, like you will be held accountable for this, and if you don't, there will be consequences. This can happen, maybe this feeling can happen in workplaces, with parents and children, or maybe in school. But in coaching, it's actually what clients want and what they're paying us for. We help them follow through in the things that are important to them. And so by offering accountability, we help our clients stick to their short-term intentions so that they can reach their long-term goals. So many of our clients have tried time and time again to make healthy changes on their own, and they've failed. And so they come to coaching to finally be able to do it. So when we think of it this way, it's a big part of what the client is paying for, what they value and appreciate from us. So I believe that accountability is one of the greatest gifts that we can offer our clients. It's one of the key features and skills that really differentiates coaching from many other helping professionals. It's really a huge value add. As I watch new coaches practice, I do see a couple of common mistakes being made. So the number one mistake I see is that new coaches help the client develop an action step, but they stop there. They don't take it to the next step further to solidify the plan with accountability measures. And then the second mistake I see is that they try to take on the accountability work for the client. For example, the coach will commit to check in with the client in between sessions to make sure that the client did what they say they'd do. And so why are these mistakes? Well, the answers will become clear as I share my tips with you today. So I've got 5 tips for you on accountability. And my first one is to understand the mindset of accountability. That's really where we need to start. So in coaching, we have to understand that the client is accountable to themselves, not the coach. The end goal is to help our clients develop their own self-accountability, so when our coaching relationship is done, they can continue maintaining and sustaining their lifestyle changes. So really our main goal during the coaching relationship is to help the client develop that self-reliance and self-efficacy. And as we help them develop this belief in themselves that they can actually do it, we help them explore their strengths, their values, and we really set them up for success. We do everything with our coaching tools, our techniques, our skills, our resources to help our clients be successful. But we do not do the work for them. So we trust that the client is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, that they have the answers inside of them. We believe in them, we trust in them. So like other aspects of coaching, accountability is client-led, it's client-driven, and it honors that the client is in the driver's seat and responsible for their actions. It's not the coach's responsibility to make sure that the client does what they say they're going to do. The client is responsible for everything that happens outside of the coaching session. So I know this is sometimes a hard one for new coaches to get their heads around because they feel like if the client doesn't do the work, then the coach has failed. They didn't do their job or provide value. But what we have to remember is to be lovingly detached to the outcomes. So that's the number one tip. Really, it's understanding the mindset of accountability as we go into it. So tip number 2 is to realize that accountability goes hand in hand with action planning. So the first step in setting up accountability is really making sure that you help your client first set up a SMART action plan, one that's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. If it's not a good plan, then accountability is not going to help. So once we help our client set up that action step, we ask about supports, obstacles, backup plans. We really want to make sure that the client leaves the session knowing what success looks like and how they're going to accomplish that action step. It's only after this is complete that we move into accountability. So my tip number 3 is about co-creating the accountability measures. So like I said, once the action step is set up and those backup plans are established, you can then move into co-creating the accountability measures. And so the number 1 question here will be, how will you hold yourself accountable to this action step? So finding how the client will hold themselves accountable. For some clients, just saying out loud to you, the client, will be enough. For others, there may be always finding their way out of things and not following through. So for some clients, we might need a little bit something more stringent, right? And again, it really wants to be individual to the client. They might hold themselves accountable by putting their action step in their calendar, setting a reminder or an alarm, maybe signing up in advance for a yoga class, for example, or tracking their progress is another great accountability step. So then the next question we want to ask is about additional support. So who else in their life can hold them accountable? Maybe they have a walking buddy, a gym partner. Maybe it's a conversation with their spouse about eating less junk food or helping with the cooking. And then finally, the final question you can ask is to discuss accountability measures between the two of you. And so the number 1 way that you as the coach are going to support accountability is by following up with your client at the next session. That is your main role and responsibility when it comes to accountability. But, the client may also ask you to check in with them in between sessions or do some additional things. So just remember that the client is responsible for the accountability, not you. So please don't take this on. If the client says, could you text me Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. when I'm supposed to be at the gym? You can really just shift the responsibility back onto the client and say something like, well, how about you text me after the gym to let me know that you've completed that action step? And you can just simply send a little emoji back. But don't take on the responsibility for that accountability measure. That's really what the reminders, alarms, and those other supports are for. So my tip number 4 is to follow up at the next session, right? So we just talked about the fact that in the previous session, you helped the client develop an action plan. So your responsibility is to check in at the next session to find out how they did with those commitments. And so really this being consistent and actually following up and asking your client how it went is really imperative to the trust in your coaching relationship. You committed to do it, you got to follow up. So the accountability check-in is all about helping your client move forward toward their goals, and it's about deepening the learning for them about their own patterns, habits, and behaviors. So the check-in would come at the beginning of that next session after a nice warm welcome, right? And so how you might do this is, just saying to the client, okay, let's check in on how your action steps went over the past week. Tell me what went well. And of course, acknowledging the client on what did go well. What contributed to this success? What did you learn from this win? About yourself, about what works for you. You might want to ask, is there anything that didn't get done? What got in the way? What were the challenges? And what can you learn from this experience? And maybe what would you do differently next time? But at this accountability check-in, you do not want to get into actually coaching around this topic. Be clear with your client that this is only a quick check-in. You might want to spend 5 to 10 minutes max at the beginning of the call on this, and then you're going to move into setting the agenda for the session. So if the client wants to continue working on maybe the things that didn't get done from that previous session, that's okay, but make sure that you give the client the opportunity to determine what the focus is for the session. So my tip number 5 is we are not the accountability police. So I think many new coaches feel the need to be the accountability police and do all the work by checking in, following up, and telling the client what to do. But as we've already discussed here, our part of the accountability measure is really to check in and follow up with them at the next session about their wins, successes, obstacles, and the things that didn't happen with their action plan from the previous week. And so while our clients do want accountability, as we talked about earlier, I'm sure they don't want to be commanded by a drill sergeant or interrogated by the accountability police or supervised by a nitpicky boss, right? That's not the coach approach. So if you're someone who doesn't really discuss accountability, then you likely have to step up your game a little bit. And if you're someone who's like a drill sergeant, maybe you need to tone it down a little bit. Find a nice happy balance in the middle there somewhere. So just remember that so much of accountability is about the tone. It's about the mindset and coming from that approach of collaboration and working together with your client as an ally and supporting them through the tough part by helping them make, those lifestyle changes and by taking action. So those are my 5 tips on accountability. I hope they were helpful for you. I believe that with these tips in mind and being an effective accountability partner, you will provide great value to your client in helping them be successful with those weekly action steps, which will ultimately lead them to reaching those longer-term health and wellness goals. So feel free to drop a comment or a question below. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time.